comic books, movies, TV, and more. Nerds are everywhere. It's time to assemble! It's Nerds United.
Hello and welcome to not just a new episode of Nerds United, but a very special episode going back to the Nerds United roots, which makes sense because we're closing in on the 10th anniversary of the podcast, and if I would have had co-host of the year Mike Luther around from the beginning, instead of being on episode 320-something, we'd be on episode 520-something. That's just the kind of consistency that Mike brings to the show, but Mike's off for this episode, and as I mentioned, we're getting back to Greg and the Creator. It's not as catchy as Nerds United, but I digress. And not only that, it's new comic book day across, where most of comic books hit the stores, and for the first time in a long time, we're back on YouTube. I can't say it's going to last, but at least for now, I'm very excited to welcome, for the first time since 2000, and I believe, find the exact day, here we go, 2017. It was a September. Oh, what a night. But welcome back to Nerds United to my longtime acquaintance and friend, Jason Copland. Jason, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining me. You have been very busy the last month or so.
Yeah. The PR machine never stops.
Now, the first time we were here, let's kind of remind the listeners, it was back episode 83. And as I mentioned, that was 6 years ago. And we'd only been doing the show. Nerds United at that point was only around for about 4 years. 83 episodes in 4 years. You do the math. We missed a few weeks, took a little bit of time off, but we were together at that time largely to talk about Kill All Monsters, which was a compendium that you did the art for, released wherever comic books are found through Dark Horse. And I feel like you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you jumped right out of that project into a project that we're going to spend the bulk of this week talking about. But let's turn the calendar back to 2017 and Kill All Monsters and the reception that you received for that book.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. It was something that Mike and I had been working on for quite a while. We kickstarted the first half, and then after, through me doing some stuff at Dark Horse, the editor that I was working with on that stuff, he kind of asked, what else do you have? And we said, well, we've got Kill All Monsters that Michael and I are making. And he's like, oh, let's do it. So we ended up taking that first book that Mike and I did, which is 126 pages, something like that. And then finishing off essentially the first story for that group of people, and that was like another 200 and something pages that I drew for that. The book ended up being like 368 pages or something crazy. And the people that knew it from the beginning, the first book that Mike put out, and then Mike and I put out, and then following us through and getting the Dark Horse stuff. So we actually had a really strong launch for that book, because the people were, with us for all those years. And so that was great. It was fantastic, and the book turned out fantastic. Like the actual object, it's nice hardcover, landscape. It was a really nice book. Like a whole package was very nice. Yeah.
I keep looking off camera because I have the book. I just think it's upstairs in the twins' closet. Now, last time we talked, there were no twins.
There you go.
And the room that they are asleep in right now, it's here in the Central Time Zone, as I joke with some of my friends, God's favorite time zone. It's after 9 o'clock. They're in bed asleep, but their room used to be the comic room, where when I would attempt to organize all my comic books, they were just sprawled out. And a few months before the twins were born, my wife said, of course she's 4 or 5 months pregnant, and she says, either you clean it or I clean it, and you know what happens if I clean it. So all the comics, at least at the time, got bagged, boarded, and boxed. So everything is safe. It's just I can't get to it right now to Vanna White everything for our lovely viewing audience. So.
Well, I've got one over there too, but I'm just too lazy to get up.
As a fellow lazy individual, I can appreciate that. Well, let's talk a little bit about. I mean, not a little bit. We're going to talk the bulk of this show about what you're working on or have been working on, really what you devoted the last several years of your life to in the concept of betting on yourself. You went, dare I say, full tilt.
Yeah, cue the music. Yeah. This one was a book that I didn't know that I had it in me, and but I had a gap in my schedule after Kill All Monsters finished, and I was just sort of thinking, well, what should I do? And just kind of got pushed. My wife kind of pushed me, said, now is a good time to see if you've got that story, ready to go. And so I just started doing it, and 5 years fast forward 5 years, and here we are.
And I'm doing things that I've never done with a guest. Wait, this sounds weird or mildly inappropriate, so I apologize. But I'm with this program that I'm still trying to figure out. I get to do fun things like this. If it works, it's not working. Oh, here we go. There we go.
Oh, look at that! A banner. Nice. I like it.
And don't worry, we're gonna make the link available in the description and the write-up for this, so you can check it out, Nerds United or jittermonkey.com, as well as YouTube, where this show will be made clear for everybody. And when we talk about Full Tilt, I've been reading obviously I've been following it. We've been Facebook friends for years, going back to Kill All Monsters, so I've been following this from its inception. and I've really enjoyed the ride because it's such an insight into the process, right? And unlike other projects that you've worked on in the past, I mean, you're not just doing the art for this, but this whole concept, story, illustration, everything, it's all out of your brain. So how does that process differ? I guess maybe the first question, and also probably the easiest question, is how does that process differ from working with Mike or working with other collaborators?
Oh, well, yeah, generally speaking, when I work with other people, I don't really have an input into what the story is about. Mike's open for me to suggest things, but generally speaking, scripts just get handed to me and I draw them. So this is very different because I'm writing for myself, and
right.
I'm writing the scenes and the characters that I want to see and I want to draw. So this book really kind of stems from I need to kind of get my own my own vision out, but also just to draw cool stuff. That's there's nothing in this book that I was like, oh, I got to draw that. It was like, oh, I get to draw that.
Right.
So that was a big change for me, was knowing that every page was going to be something that I really wanted to draw, whether it was just a talking scene or it was a chase scene or a fight scene or any kind of scene. It came from me, and if I wasn't excited about writing it, then it wouldn't be there, and I sure as heck wouldn't want to draw it if I wasn't excited about writing it. So, that's the main difference, is that well, this is going to sound bad, but I was really excited to draw this.
Well, maybe the next question will be, I don't know if it'd be easier or harder to answer. When you're given a script, you're getting something of an outline, and you, I don't want to say parameters, but you're being told, here's the story, here's the scene. Is it easier or more difficult to when you're creating the scenes? And I only ask that because, again, having followed some of these. I know the countless whiteout pens that that you went through, and a lot of changes that were made along the way. So is it easier or more difficult when you're drawing for yourself?
I would probably say that it was easier because I'm not worried about pleasing anybody. It sounds a little weird. An artist probably should just be drawing to please themselves anyways. But when I do collaborate with people, I'm concerned with their reaction or their, if I'm not feeling the energy off them, that they're enjoying it, then that kind of brings me down, and then that kind of destroys some of my energy. So when I'm drawing for myself, it's or just creating on my own, then it's much easier to maintain that energy and be excited by it. Yeah.
The Full Tilt has been, again, it's a story that you've been wanting to tell. It's a story that was in your head that essentially, over the course of the last several years, burrowed its way out and found its way on paper. What, over the course of what do you think, 4 years that you've been working, 4 or 5 years?
It's definitely been 5 years.
5 years? Yeah. Over the course of the 5 years, what's the longest stretch that you just stepped away from the table? Like, you know what, I gotta put it down. I've got, be it vacation or it's starting to piss me off. Things aren't working out maybe creatively. And like, was it 1 day? Was it 2 weeks? What's the longest that you just left the project alone just to clear your head?
That's a good question. Well, because this is sort of my full-time job, I had a tough time ever really pulling myself away from it. Mm-hmm. We did go on a couple vacations over the course of those 5 years, so I might have been sketching or something, but I would have maybe let maybe a week or a week and a half or something away from actually doing it. But when I'm at home, maybe be able to step away for a day. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, just like, so many of us, you have a family as well. Mm-hmm. And I know, again, that, through watching, but I don't mean that in a weird way. But, like your son's grown up quite a bit in the last 5 years.
Yeah, he's a big guy. He's taller than me now, which is just crazy to think about.
You can always look back and be like, son, before I started Full Tilt, you were smaller than me, and after Full Tilt, well...
Yeah, he's actually already brought that up. He's very aware of how long it's taken me. Oh yeah.
Similarly, I can say that pre-Full Tilt, I only had one child and one son, and post-Full Tilt, I have 3 boys now. So, let's get into kind of the meat of the story, and having seen some of your professional colleagues and friends who are in the business commenting on it. And I don't want to. I'm not going to name names, but I feel like one of them had a very interesting description on how their takeaway of Full Tilt, like a sci-fi noir. Tell us just a little bit about the story. And again, 308 pages. It's quite an undertaking. But tell me a little bit about the Full Tilt universe.
All right. Well, it's set in the future. It's about 200 years in the future, and it takes place in a kind of a mega city like. Named New Manhattan, and the story is essentially about loyalty, and some of the things that people have to go through to maintain loyalty, and that and the balance between ethics and that sort of thing. It's an action. It doesn't sound like it, but it's an action story. It's a thinker. There's some thinking stuff in there, but it's an action story. I mean, Full Tilt it should be an action story with a title like that, and and it's essentially about Massimo Miller, the main character, who is a consigliere of one of the crime families of New Manhattan. There's 5 crime families that essentially rule everything, and he's the consigliere to one of the dons. And during a meeting of all of the heads of the 5 crime families, there's an assassination event that kills all of the crime family heads, and Massimo there, he's the last one standing, and so everyone, all of the crime families, the new leaders are looking to him as the essentially the culprit, and it's on him now to get away and clear his name and find out who the real killer was, and so it's a mix of crime, noir. It's kind of, as people have said, it's like The Godfather meets the Warriors in a Blade Runner setting. So it's futuristic, yet it harbors back to like a Godfather sort of era with that sort of the loyalty and the structure of a crime family and that sort of thing. It's a sprawling tale for sure. It has lots of cool stuff, and it's got gladiators fighting to the death. It's got flying cars. It's got flying bikes. It's got all sorts of strange tech and that sort of thing. But at the heart of it, it's an action film It's an action comic that has some heart in it. But I can't really talk about that because that's sort of a spin in the story that I don't really want to tip my hat to.
Well, the little Freudian slip there. We see a lot of comic properties, intellectual properties these days, being adapted to a screen, be it the big screen or I don't want to say dissected, but broken up, as a serial from, The Boys to Paper Girls to Sweet Tooth. Literally, that list goes on and on.
Yeah.
So when you said, that the film aspect is not to say that you've got red carpet aspirations, but when you mentioned, you mentioned, Godfather and Blade Runner, and some people will look at the art and draw some Sin City comparisons.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah.
There could it be adapted? I mean, is it flexible enough to be viewed in other medium?
Yeah, I think I'm usually not one that really likes the idea of creating a comic solely to sell it to another thing. And this book is definitely a comic, 100%. But it is very cinematic, and a lot of the influences that were kind of working on me while I was making this were from film. But I mean, it's a comic in my brain. It's 100% a comic. Now, getting back to your question, I could totally see this as a movie. I don't think it would make a series at all. Yeah. But again, that wasn't my main goal at all. I would be
just had a story you had to get out.
Yeah, for sure. And the one of the things about doing this book was that it was a chance for me to sort of explore what I might have to say about stuff. I actually had a very loose outline when I started, and I kind of worked my way and chiseled my way into a story, and I kind of learned that I actually did have something to say, which was kind of cool because when I started, I didn't know if I actually had anything. So this was a great way for me to sort of figure out what it was that I wanted to say about specific things, like love and loyalty and that sort of thing. So it was a chance to actually kind of discover stuff about myself and and some of the things that I think about internally that I might not have really actually thought about till the moment I wrote this thing. So
in that creative process, again, as we talk more often than not, you've got a collaborator, and so the first ink is theirs, writing down or typing it out, something like that. How much did you have written before you started doing the art?
Not enough. I had an outline that I figured was about 120 pages worth of story, and so from that outline, I there were scenes that I had in my head that I knew that I wanted to draw, and what I ended up doing was just I had designed characters and I got them into the room and put them in the setting and just sort of let them talk. And what I did was I wrote down the book. The script was essentially all written in dialogue, because I didn't really need to tell myself what the scenes were, or give panel descriptions of angles or anything like that. So really what it turned out to be was like, I need to put these two characters together for this scene. Here's the goal of the scene, and then have the two of them just talk it out. And I would write down the dialogue from that. And so for doing that, I learned about the characters more. And then as I learned more about the characters, I realized, they have more of a backstory that that needs to be fleshed out, or there's some sort of connection or disagreement or whatever between these characters. We maybe need to talk about that or figure out how that fits into the story. And so even though I had a really loose beginning, eventually I kind of chiseled it in and figured out exactly what it was that these characters wanted, and how they related to one another, and then fit it all into a story. I had never written anything this length, so this was a whole new experience for me. And I was drawing as I was doing that. And so a bunch of the scenes were drawn, and I got to a point where I had all these scenes and that I really liked, and then I got a little freaked out because I didn't know exactly how they all connected in the grand scheme of things. So after about 2 years of drawing, I actually stopped drawing, and I sat down and I got all my stuff together, all my Google Docs, all my handwritten pages, all the stuff that's in the margins on the pages, and I brought it all together, and I sat and I wrote a script. And like I say, that might sound like a no-brainer to most people. Why didn't you start there? But being a visual thinker, and never having really written anything, I didn't really know exactly what my process was. So once I had the outline and I had these characters and I had these scenes and I started drawing, I got excited about all of that, and I got kind of seduced by the art, and then I got to a point about, like I say, about 2 years in, about 180 odd pages. I was like, oh no, how does this all fit together? So I stopped drawing, and for a year I sat and I wrote the script, and I got it into a form that I thought was pretty solid, but I definitely was too close to it. So I brought in an editor, James Powell, who actually did some editing for Kill 'Em Monsters. And he's a tough character, that guy. He won't give me an easy out. So which was perfect. And so I handed him this thing, and he went through it for a couple days, and it was a nerve-wracking couple days because I had no idea if he was going to tear it apart, or just was like, oh geez, here we go. And he got back to me, and he had some notes, but overall he said it was pretty solid, and it's pretty solid from James Powell means that it's pretty good. So once I had, looked at his notes and kind of reworked a few things that he suggested, I jumped back into the drawing. So it was sort of 2 years of drawing / writing, a year of writing, and then 2 years of drawing. So that's my 5-year total right there. And like I say, it's not a way somebody should write a book or make a book, but it was the way that I had to write it and I had to make it because I didn't have any other way to do it. So it just happened. I will say my next one, I will write the script before I start drawing, because there's a number of pages that I drew that I had to scrap because there were scenes that just got taken out or changed, or I had to add a character or whatever. So there's plenty of work that I did that no one will ever see. But again, that had to happen for me to get to where I got to.
Talking about, the writing element of it, and I know you said it was mostly, dialogue based, but did you, what kind of research did you do, or did you have to do any as far as, we've all seen the Godfather movies, but as far as finding the inner workings of a mob family or things, did any research go into that, or did you just, I don't say, pull it out thin air, but did you just say, hey, in my universe, this is how things work? Yeah,
I did when I first started, because I didn't know if I had an in with the character. I felt I needed to know him a little bit about him. I did look up organized crime and kind of how the Italian mob families were structured and who reported to who and what their jobs were, that sort of thing. I wouldn't say that I did a deep dive. I did enough to kind of get my head around what this character would probably have to do or would have to think about. But, other than the things that are in popular culture, a few articles that I read about crime families, New York crime families, and the structure, that was about the extent of my research. Because again, like you alluded to, it's my world. It's set in the future. So that was one reason why I did it, is that I could get away with a lot more setting it in the future than making it current or even 20 years from now. Going 200 years, all things are off the table at that point. So, so that was about the extent of my research.
But which is, I feel, on the outside looking in, maybe the appropriate amount. You don't have to deep dive into, all the, behind the scenes politics, but I feel like if there was a glaring error, it might be something that takes the reader out of the story, Yeah.
I don't think that there's anything that I've done that will really trip anyone up. I don't think. I was kind of careful.
Now, you've been gracious enough to share some of the art of Full Tilt with me, and if I put up a picture, would you mind kind of describing a little bit about that scene?
I can certainly try.
All right, first of all, we got to start with this one, because I've heard famously Batman the Animated Series, a lot of the art was done on black paper.
Okay.
Helped to kind of create and cultivate that Gotham being dark atmosphere. We see this, and there's a lot of negative space.
Yeah.
What you didn't have dark paper? You just went through a lot of pencils, right?
Yeah. I will say that I think I cheated on half of that. Half of that is just digital fill. But there are definitely pages that have a lot of black, actual black ink on it. Yeah.
This might be one of them.
Yeah, that's all there. Yeah.
What are we seeing here? Is this part of the city or? Yeah.
So I've got a 22 page run of. So I've got 11. I got 11 double pagers that all connect to one another, so that it's not one big image, but it's one scene that at the end of a 1-2 pager, it actually matches up. So they do move along. So that one there was the very last 2 pages.
Oh, okay.
of the thing. And so that is the end of it's sort of the result of the chase scene that happened through the city. That giant structure is the monastery. So there's a monastery within the middle of the city that hasn't been accessible for close to 200 years. So so what that is that's a later scene. It's a later area that some major stuff happens in. That is actually cleverly alluded to on the very early on. It's in the background. It's almost always in the background of these scenes through different areas of the city. One thing that I actually was pretty proud of myself with is that in each section of the city, so each section that's run by a different crime family, I have different architecture in each of those areas. So there's like brutalist and like traditional brick and mortar and weird sci-fi Tron type buildings, sleek and that sort of thing. So the monastery is another area of the city that is sort of its own thing. Yeah.
And call me out if I'm way off base, but as I'm picturing what you're saying about each crime family has their own, each section has its own definitive architecture. To the listeners and the viewers, I'm over here saying, like, think Zootopia.
Haven't seen it.
Okay, well, it's a Disney movie. If you had younger kids, you'd. Well, I'm not going to spend any time on that. All I know is that as you were continuing to build this 11-page, 22-page...
It's 11 two-page spreads, so yeah,
right.
22 pages.
and as it's going on, and you're sharing a picture, a portion every other day, something like that on Facebook, you're like, man, I really hate the writer. Like, who does this to the artist?
That's all tongue in cheek. I have to tell you, I actually love 2-page spreads. And I should mention for people that maybe aren't seeing, they can't see this or whatever, but my 2-page spreads generally aren't one big image like Kirby would do. It's usually it has a major image, but then I'll have inset panels, or I'll have broken that one image up into different things for storytelling purposes, for pacing, that sort of thing. So there's not always one giant image. So and I really enjoy working in that format. It's kind of the same as Kill All Monsters. Kill All Monsters is a landscape book. Mm-hmm. And there's just something about a landscape canvas that I like more than a portrait canvas. It's from my brain just seems to do compositions easier. I find doing compositions on that sort of format, which is just weird because it's the exact same shape. It's just that the reading experience goes, left to right, generally speaking. Right. So when you've got a longer canvas to bring people down, I feel is I wouldn't say more difficult, but it's just less. I like being able to go back and forth, and so having that expansive canvas is something that just seems to work for me in my brain. And so even though I was cursing the writer, it was actually the artist that was saying, let's put another 2-page spread in here.
For, as I mentioned, 5 years, I've been watching this unfold, and came to the penultimate moment where, all right, everything's done, everything's essentially digitized. I know you were spending hours and days by the scanner, putting everything in, cleaning up, all the pencil lines, etc. And it came time to launch the crowdfunding campaign. And we mentioned at the top of the show Kickstarter, but I've seen more and more that comic creators are moving away from Kickstarter, and specifically Full Tilt is available. Campaign is live now. As people are hearing this at the end of May, there are 8 days left. But Zoop, is it Zoop? I see on my side it's zoop.gg. Is it zoop.com? If somebody just wanted to.
No, it's .gg.
It is .gg. But check that out.
Yeah.
And of course, we'll have the link available in the description in the website on Facebook so that everybody can check out. They still have time to look at Full Tilt. But what demanded the change, or maybe the evolution of the crowdfunding platform from Kickstarter to Zoop?
Well, because it was always going to be a crowdfunded book. When I started, Zoop actually didn't exist. So I even catch myself saying that I'm Kickstartering my book, which I'm not. I'm Zooping it. But
sounds so much dirtier.
I know, isn't that great? So it was one of those things where I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to do it on Kickstarter. And then when I got a couple of years in, and I started realizing that the book was supposed to be about 120 pages when I started, and then it grew and it grew and it grew, and it wasn't written in a way that could get broken up into individual issues or even into trades. It was one big book. So as it got to be sort of unwielding, I started thinking to myself, I really don't want to do the crowdfunding part of it, like the fulfillment and even finding a printer and all that sort of. I'm Canadian, so dealing with stuff across the border and having stuff shipped, it was just like, oh, that's not really what I want to do. Zoop for me is a company that will find the printer, deal with the printer, deliver my files to them, have it printed. The books get shipped to Zoop, and then they do the fulfillment. So essentially, once I give them my final files, it's done for me. I don't have to do any of that other stuff, which is very, very seriously the strong point for me. And my wife loves that, because I would be I'd be horrible to live with until it was all taken care of. So,
point of order, I feel like there's one thing you will have to do.
What's that?
And that's sign some of these.
So what's going to happen is that we're actually going to get the pages that I sign and I do the remarked sketches on. We get them printed. They get mailed to me. I do all that stuff here, draw on all of the individual pages and sign on the individual pages and send them back. And then they get shipped to the printer.
Oh, wow.
when the binding starts. So those will actually get bound into the book. So even though that's one of the reasons why there's a delay from the end of the campaign to when stuff will move forward, is that the stuff those pages have to get printed and sent to me. I have to do all my stuff. I have to do, I think it's 50 sketches. And then I package all that up and it gets sent back to the Zoop guys, who then send it to the printer. And then they start doing the binding and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, so that's the workaround for that. Instead of shipping books up here and then shipping books back, which would essentially just be a financial ruin. We're gonna. That's the workaround for that.
Well, that's tremendous. And look, let's address the elephant in the room, shall we?
Okay.
And it's a great elephant. But this campaign has been live for the beginning of May, correct?
It's 20. I think it just hit 3 weeks today. 20 days or 21 days. I'm not, something like that.
You were. Before we talk about where it's at currently, what were your expectations going to crowdfunding? Again, you've been in the industry. You have collaborators, colleagues, friends in the industry, people who've helped maybe spread the word. But what were your expectations when you hit go live or begin campaign 3 weeks ago?
Well, to be 100% honest with you, I actually thought that that the goal, which is $10,000, would be something that I would be struggling to hit with even days left. I honestly thought that I would in the socials crying and pleading and selling my only child, that to get the book over the line.
Hey, depending on the day, I've got one or two to spare.
Well, mine's all going off to college, so they probably don't want them anymore.
Two of mine are still in diapers, so.
Oh, well, then there you go. It's like starting fresh. It was. I had high expectations, but very tempered at the same time. Because I think $10,000 is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. Raising $10,000 is no small feat. So when it went live, I was just like, oh man, I sure hope it's I'm not down to the last 2 hours hoping getting somebody. This is all I always joke about, getting like a friend to bid to get a high priced tier so that pushes me over the top. Like, that's honestly, it was just like, oh god, maybe my wife will have to buy a page from me so that we make it.
Was it an all or nothing, like you have to hit the goal? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, because there are some crowdfunding platforms that you kind of can keep what you make along the way, but I think Kickstarter, you have to hit a goal, right? And then Zoop requires hitting a spot.
Yes. Yeah, I believe there are a few. There's definitely one that's attached to the wrong type of people that will also do that. But to me, that's setting myself up for a real problem. I think that if you set a goal, I set a goal so that the books and the shipping and everything will be taken care of, and it won't cost me anything. I mean, I was looking at like breaking even essentially. Right. And so to not make the goal would only put me in a financial, that would put me in a spot that I'm not prepared to do. So if I asked for 10,000, I only got 7. I wouldn't want that money, because I still have to come up with the 3.
Sure. Well, let's tell people where you are right now. 3 weeks in, as people are hearing this, 8 days to go. You hit the 10,000.
I did, yeah.
And now you're close to 40.
Yeah, I am.
That's pretty awesome.
I 100% believe that is awesome. There's no way around that. I was blown away. We funded in an hour.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and I still kind of can't believe it. Yeah, and I am very grateful for everybody that's backed it, that's tweeted about it, that's posted about it, has put me on their podcast. It's all fantastic, and it's because of the people that have come out and supported me that this book's being made. So I appreciate every single person that's helped me along the way.
I just want to say, I'm foolish.
Let
me, because I'd be like, hey Jason, what are you doing tomorrow night? Be like, man, I am busy. What are you doing next Wednesday? I'm busy. I'm doing this podcast, doing this other show. So it is not for lack of interest or desire on my part to have you on earlier, but man, you've been out there hitting it. And when you hit the goal in the first, you said hour.
Yeah.
And when, obviously that's a huge bit of momentum kicking things off, because at that point you can take a breath, right? You don't have to worry. You don't have to worry about, being 70% there. Boom, you're there. Now you're that times 4. What does that mean to you as a creator? I mean, this is something that you've put your heart and soul in for 5 years.
Yeah.
Tell me about, where are you at emotionally in the response that people that, most of which you don't know and will probably never meet. Yeah. But they are so interested in this project that they've shown out for you.
Yeah. Oh, it's pretty humbling. Yeah, I honestly don't even know how to thank people. I I was expecting to be very yeah. I thought down the wire here I was just going to be I was just going to be destroyed by by the amount of work and stuff that I put into it, and having it maybe or maybe not making it for it to fund right away is huge for me, and it helps me realize that I did take a chance on myself with this. I having never really written anything for myself, and I didn't take any paying jobs. I essentially took myself out of work for hire. I turned stuff down quite a few times while I was doing this book, and it's mainly because I decided that I was going to bet on myself and see where it led. So for people coming out like this and supporting the book is huge for me, because it feels like I've made the right decision, and that moving forward I can do this again and continue to sort of get my singular vision out there, and tell the stories that are hiding underneath this hat here. I'm excited by it. I'm a little overwhelmed though, in a good way. I think that it's fantastic, and I appreciate every single one that's done something to help me get here.
Kill All Monsters was kind of what it sounds, correct me, kaiju, monsters, giant robots. Mm-hmm. This has an element of sci-fi, but it's a lot more, deeper, layered than just saying sci-fi. It's love and loyalty, respect and integrity. What do you feel like from the art side? Like, is there a genre that's really your niche, or can you, like, your next project, could it be, I hate to even bring up like capes and cowls, or do you have a certain comfort level in, the more, I don't know, sci-fi action aspect?
Yeah, I think that sci-fi is essentially where I live in terms of story creation. I think it will always be a part of the stories that I want to tell. I've already started to think of my next book, which is still a ways off because Mike and I are going to do some more Kill All Monsters in the meantime. But it's already started with a sci-fi bent, so that's something that it feels very comfortable and helps me generate ideas. And I think this is one of the things I like about sci-fi, and I think I touched upon it earlier, is that setting it in the future opens the door for me to be able to do anything. I don't have to worry about continuity. I don't have to worry about the history or getting something right against something wrong, unless it's something that's integral to the story. I can kind of just fly by the seat of my pants and make up stuff as I go. And I haven't even decided if my next story is actually going to be on Earth, because if it's not on Earth, then everything's off the table. I can do whatever I want. So I think sci-fi is essentially the first thing that comes into my brain when it's like, okay, what do you want to draw, or what kind of story do you want to make? Sci-fi seems to be it.
It's limitless, really,
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, let's remember that at one point, boys and girls out there, the Jetsons was sci-fi set in the future. It had no rules. They could change every. I mean, flying cars we still haven't seen. Robot. I mean, I have a Roomba down here. I mean, that's about the closest thing we have to a robot made. But there are no rules in the creative process. And that has to be just exceptionally liberating to the creative types, the yous of the world.
Yes, I think so. But it's probably because I have an interest in science fiction-y type things. I think if I was more of a historical fiction bented person, I would probably focus more on World War II or something like that. But that's not really where I find my entertainment, generally speaking. I'm usually out in the stars.
And how freeing is it knowing that, as you mentioned, not even sure if your next, story will take place on Earth. It could take place I'm not going to say that famous line from that famous franchise, but it could take place somewhere in the stars and potentially not even have a humanoid-looking character in it.
Yeah, I've thought about that. I feel like I need to, try to step away from the white male as my protagonist, but at the same time, I'm a little nervous about doing anything other than that. I'll have to navigate those waters when I stick my toe in there. But again, being in another galaxy or another universe or whatever, it opens the door to anything. So I mean, I could even just have a droid, a robot as my main character. We'll see. Like I say, I've started to put a few ideas down, but it is 100% malleable at this point.
Those the infancy of a story sometimes is the most fun, because it can go in so many different directions. And you used the word chisel a few times back, and I don't think a lot of people realize that the chunk of marble that Michelangelo was given, it had been rejected by other artists, and he took, because they deemed it to be impure. They deemed it to be a flawed piece of stone, and from that chunk of flawed stone, he chiseled his way, carved out one of the greatest statues of all time, David. And so that beginning, when that story can go in so many different directions and you're not sure, and then again you start working on it, you start chiseling away, and it becomes a work of art, but it all starts at the beginning. So I can understand why that's one of the more exciting times.
Yeah, that's the hope anyways. Chisel away and just have a mound of rubble. There's always pitfalls to creativity. And you know what? If you fail, just get back up on there and try it again.
What's, as we get to the end here, what's something that you want listeners, viewers of this to really be that motivation, that inspiration to get them over to zoop.gg, and what do you want that big takeaway for Full Tilt to be to them?
Oh geez. That's
amongst all the other great topics that we've talked about.
That's a big question. Well, as it stands, to get over there and back it, the one, and I mean, it's going to be a 320 page book. It's oversized. It's a hardcover. It's a passion project of mine that I've been working on for a really long time. I'm really proud of it. I've got Tim Daniel did the cover design. He also did the Full Tilt logo. He's doing the interior design. And Tim Daniel is the designer of Vault Comics. So Vault Comics always look fantastic. So it's going to be a fantastic looking book. I got Troy Pateri doing the lettering, and Troy does like all the Top Cow books. He does books for DC. He's done books for Marvel. He's fantastic as well. So it's in great hands. It's going to be a fantastic object on its own, and then it's also going to be a fantastic read with some very I hope fantastic artwork. Art is subjective. Mm-hmm. But I've heard from quite a few people that they seem to think that it's something special. So and then on top of that, as far as my plans go, I don't do shows, I don't do conventions. I'm not going to overprint this. This is probably the only opportunity that people will have to have it in this format. I have no plans for it to go anywhere else. This is sort of it. If it has life elsewhere, I highly doubt it's going to be an oversized hardcover book. It'll probably be softcover and regular size. So if people are even remotely interested in something that is going to be pretty limited, this would be their opportunity. They've got about 10 days left, or 8 days when this thing drops.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know. And then once that final buzzer rings, I don't know if people will be able to ever get it again. So, and you know what? I'm kind of okay with that, because originally when I made this book, the goal was for it to pay for itself and for myself to have a copy of it, and it's done that. So if it has a life after this, I mean, that's great, but that's not my goal. It was never really my goal. So this might be the only opportunity people have. So yeah, take that as you may.
You don't want to miss out on this opportunity for what Jason just described to be a limited edition, oversized hardcover version of Full Tilt. I have mine ordered and paid for, and I think paid for. I don't know if I paid for now or at the end of the, okay, campaign. All right. But mine is ordered. I'm excited because I know it's going to look beautiful, both on the shelf and as I'm reading the story. I love that I've been able to follow this process for 5 years, and so I'm very excited to see the completed work. Now it might take me a few weeks to get through. 320 pages is no minor undertaking. But I'm very excited to read and look at and hold in my hands the last 5 years of your life, essentially, Jason. So
yeah, it's kind of scary when you put it in those terms. But it's 100% true. Yeah, it's the last 5 years of my creative life in one big, gorgeous book. Yeah.
I couldn't be happier for you for the way that everybody turned out and supported the campaign. Again, we'll have links to the campaign on Facebook, YouTube, jitterymonkey.com. I can't encourage you enough to go out, check it out, and flip through the campaign. If you made it all the way through here, you've heard a little bit about what the story's going to be. This is we always talk, Nerds Unite, about non-spoiler. I definitely don't want anything spoiled for me. I'm excited to again hold it in my hands, read it, and go on that journey all on my own. But Jason, I just completely thrilled for you, thrilled that this labor of love has come to fruition in this big way, and very thankful and grateful that you've taken time out, because I know you've been doing a lot of these shows, so I know that your wife is very understanding, but she's like, where he again? Does she understand the scope of everything? I mean, from what you've been working on for the what looks to be very modest goal that you set out for yourself, and where it's at now. I know she's your number one fan, and just tell me a little bit about that, about her reaction to everything.
Oh, well, she's been really supportive right from the beginning. I mean, she essentially was the one that was like, "Oh, you need to do this." So she was in on this whole thing from step one. And I, this is my day job, so I talk about it all the time. So she unfortunately has heard about a lot of this, and but you know what is great is that she actually she hasn't read it, and she hasn't seen all of the pages. There's only like 4 people that have seen all the pages. So, and I've been very, very careful to make sure that no spoilery things get out there, because
right.
Because there are stuff in this book that I'm hoping have people kind of going, oh, okay, yeah, I wasn't expecting that, and hopefully the ending, I feel the ending really nails it, but that's part of the secrecy of it all, is that I don't want to spoil that reading experience, like you were saying. I'd rather have people excited about the book and then just dive in and experience it without knowing pretty much anything about it. So I've been rather cagey, and probably it's cost me a whole lot of people backing it. But at the same time, I've done more than I thought I was going to do. So I seem to have done something okay along the way.
Here at Nerds United, we have a running joke especially when you talk about some of these tentpole franchises, these blockbusters, and you get look, especially when they're comic book or Star Wars, something like that. I know I'm gonna go see the movie. Yeah. You don't have to show them. You don't have to give away too much, and yet that's what they do when those third or fourth trailers come out, when they're like, in 10 days, in 3 days. I'm like, damn, I don't want to see all that. So I am very appreciative of keeping some cards close to your chest, and that is what has me really excited for Full Tilt. Again, I've been viewing from afar, so to speak, through social media and things like that for the last 5 years, and I'm very excited to finally get it in my hand and be all in on Full Tilt. So
nice, man. Well, I really appreciate your support and you waiting 5 years.
We joked before we started recording that when I pulled up jerrymonkey.com and I typed in your name, and it was September 7th of 2017, as I mentioned at the beginning, episode 83, and it said it's the podcast 3 or 4 months in the making. And I joked, I said, this is the episode that's about 5 years in the making. Yeah. but that, patience is a virtue, and it's what I'm working on every day still. But being able to go on this ride with you for the last several years now has been really fun, and for me, really being able to engage with you and make lighthearted comments and things like that on social media, on Facebook and whatnot. It's been really fun. So I'm glad that we finally got to this point, and in a time that is, we'll say, unspecified, but in the near future, I'll have Full Tilt in my hand. 320 pages. I hope the FedEx guy has a back brace on.
There you go, yeah.
But thank you, Jason, for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing all of this with me, with the listeners and with the viewers. And congratulations on the success that you've had on the campaign. And we're here over the course of the next week and change. We'll see if we can get you some more. But really, thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure, Craig, and thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And this is the first time we've used this software for you listeners and viewers out there. This is the first time we've used this software for video format. It appears to have worked. Like, Jason's been here the whole time. We didn't cut. We didn't have to do anything like that. So be looking out in the not too distant future for the co-host of the year, Mike Luther, and I to bring video back, but also maybe we can do live streaming events, and maybe we can make you viewers and listeners a part of the show as well. But this has worked. I can't thank Jason enough, and we'll be back, Mike and I, here in just a couple of days for a brand new episode of Nerds United, a Jittery Monkey podcast. And Jason, we always end the show with those old familiar lines from a now defunct movie rental franchise. So I will say be kind, and you can say
rewind.
That's it. Thanks so much, everybody.